All right, good morning, people. Let's see if this is working. Hoping I don't have to keep the other tabs open. All right, let's see. Check if I'm live on YouTube. I can't tell if I am. Somebody else will have to let me know, I guess. Yeah, it's weird. Okay, so I'm live on Substack. That's the one that's important. As far as I know, Substack will record all of this and then edit it, edit into a few clips for me, which is pretty convenient. It's mainly the reason I'm doing this today. Going to be a little quick impromptu stream. Just going to read through some of the things here on my own profile that I posted before. I think it'll get out to more people if I read it out loud rather than depend on people trying to read it. I've noticed people don't tend to read a lot. But anyway, yeah, this will just be a quick stream, read through some of the explainers I've put up and see if I can get some clips out of it. Anyway, let's get started. So, anti imperialists in December of 2024. Assad is not perfect, but al Jalani is very obviously a US and Israel backed puppet, and Syria will descend into chaos if he is put in power. Now, we all saw this coming, all those anti imperialists. We know this from observing the US overthrow of Libya, and then empire cucks at that same time. Two things can be true, stupid tanky. This is one of the worst things to ever come out of the deep state. One of the worst psyops lately is two things can be true. And it's basically a quote unquote nuance argument that allows liberals to simp for the empire and pretend that they're progressives. Stop with the conspiracy theories, you Assadist. Remember being called an Assadist for saying that what was going to happen would happen? 1 year later, and exactly what the anti imperialists said would happen has occurred. This tragic loss of life could have been avoided. Have you at least learned this time? And the empire cucks once again. Oh my god, did you hear about Nicki Minaj? Syria, what's that? That really is how it is. So let's see. That's a quick explainer for the Syria situation. Once again, the anti-imperialists were correct. Anti-imperialists in February 2022. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is unfortunate, but an expected outcome of decades of NATO expansion. Yeah, they admitted this themselves. And the US installing a puppet government in Ukraine in 2014, starting a civil war. Many US officials have said so themselves, and the US provoked Russia anyway. Yeah, the US officials said this would happen. Like American generals said, overthrowing the Ukrainian government, trying to have Ukraine join NATO would be a red line for Russia and would provoke an invasion. And that's what they did. Like Biden did that on purpose. Empire cucks. Slava Ukraini, down with Putler. Balkanize Russia. The anti-imperialists once again. Neo-Nazis like Azov, OUN, UDA, Corpus, and Right Sector are bad, actually. Imagine. And Ukraine is unlikely to win a proxy war of attrition against Russia. They should surrender and negotiate for peace while they're behind. Whatever, Tanky. I support neo-Nazis now. This is the Empire Cooks again. Let's see. Oh, I have to share my screen. So silly. I can't believe I didn't do that. Sorry, you guys. I knew I was missing a crucial step there. These are mostly text-based posts, but still. So yeah, this is the Empire Cut guy. 1 million dead orcs. 4 years later, and Ukraine has lost its disputed eastern territory. Ukraine has lost 1 million people, and for nothing. We warned you this would happen. Trump blew Bill Clinton. Yeah, this is around when all the time when people were like memeing about this as if it was like the case that Trump actually gave Bill Clinton a blowjob. So this is 28 weeks ago I made this. Let's see, what else does the Empire Cook say? Okay, no, that's the end of it. Let's go back again, see if we can get some other ones here. Oh, here's a good one. So here's the anti-imperialist explaining. As Marxists, we oppose sex work. It's an exploitative and classist industry. This does not mean we oppose sex workers. They are workers and should be supported. Whatever, Tanky. Stupid swerve. You cannot buy consent. You are not supporting workers by sexually exploiting them. Should be obvious. You should give sex workers your money without forcing them to do sex acts they would not do voluntarily if they were not paid. Again, this should all be basic common sense. If somebody doesn't want to have sex with you and you have to give them money to do it, you're buying consent. So you're committing rape. You should not do that. Oh my God, just say you hate sex workers. Yeah. My favorite one says they love doing it. Many people claim to love their jobs under capitalism. That is a neoliberal justification for capitalist exploitation. You have no right to other people's bodies, no matter how much you pay. As Marxists, we oppose sex work. Yeah. Back to the beginning again. This is a funny thing that I see all the time. So, one of the funniest things that people do repeatedly on here, and this is on every website, is when I say that there are no vanguards anywhere in the West, they somehow think I said I have a vanguard party by myself. Again, just totally not understanding what a party is. Can't be just one person. Or that my Discord server is a vanguard, or that I'm going to start one for you. This has happened dozens of times by now, and I can only assume it's a result of lower cognitive ability to be so thoroughly unable to understand something that you make up an entirely different thing to argue with instead. And again, this is what liberals were doing in the sex work slide before. They cannot argue with the argument you're presenting, they cannot argue with your actual point, so they just substitute something else and then argue against that. Was it straw manning? Like they just say a different silly thing and then pretend they are winning the argument by arguing against the stupid thing that they said instead of what you actually said. I understand that for most of you, politics isn't a real thing you seriously engage with. It's content consumption, and that's okay. But please understand, you are profoundly stupid, and it's very important that whatever movement you are a part of remains unserious and accomplishes nothing. It would set a terrible precedent for humanity if influencers and their simps took power and principled militants lost. I support the current revolution that is actually happening socialist and anti imperialist countries decolonizing the globe. I've been saying this for years, and in that time, thousands of you have mocked me, asking when I expect the anti imperialist bloc would remove the US military bases from their countries. And in that time, Iran has removed many, while your protests and mutual aid and denouncing these anti imperialist countries for not being pure enough have done nothing. This is even more relevant this coming week, or this past week, like the last few days. Iran has destroyed several more military bases and is on the verge of launching a military ground invasion into Kuwait to destroy more US bases there. Again, what have the dildo protests accomplished? What has the hashtag resistance in the US or the rest of the West accomplished? Not a single thing. I don't respect your efforts. You don't get a good grade anywhere for trying and failing. I don't care about your feel good therapy practice, and I have no obligation to join you at a dance protest before I can say that it's obviously not effective. I'm a propagandist for communism and anti imperialism. You don't have to take that seriously, but I do, and I reach millions of people with my public platform despite its limited reach. You can choose to talk to people one on one at whatever event you like, but you will never reach this many. And that's the truth. You guys are not serious people. If you're still going to protest and doing mutual aid, if you're still working with any of the existing, obviously liberal parties that call themselves revolutionaries, well, then you do in fact deserve whatever the government is about to bring down on you with their new McCarthy style crackdowns on leftists in the West in the U.S. If you have been engaging in silly therapy as praxis by going to protests, by getting your face on camera, getting yourself recorded, being quote unquote out in the streets and thinking that you're better than anyone online who says that you need a real vanguard party before you can actually have a serious movement, well, then you do deserve to go to El Salvador. Oh, here's oh shit, I clicked the wrong thing. This is a post explaining that you should just block me if you follow Gulag the Libs. Um, if anyone wants to check this out, it's on my the explainers highlight on the profile underscore turn leftist on Instagram. But basically, Gulag the Libs is just a male manipulator and a misogynist. And so if you follow them, I would just like you to block me. This is just more of me cleaning up my algorithm. They're also Marxist Leninist dad posting on Twitter. Oh, I guess I have to pause these. Some of these, I guess I just posted to stories. That'll make it a little more difficult. Sorry. All right. So there was a time when I was posting like every day the same meme. It was Stalin and Lenin sitting next to each other. giving like a smug look toward the camera, and I was asking, have the mutual aid and dildo protests worked yet? Because obviously they're not going to. So I just ask every day. I also lost interest in doing that. So, but anyway, on day 19, I had captioned to my post: "You can choose to use your online platforms and your in-person time to gently nudge whoever you want in whatever way you think you have the time for, and you can choose to support silly liberal praxis in the hopes it will eventually morph into an effective movement that threatens power by magic. I will continue to support actually existing socialists and anti-imperialists and call things what they are. I don't support American leftists. They're not on the left. They are not genuinely trying to fight capitalism. They are trying to feel better about losing. They are not forming vanguard parties. They are only doing mutual aid and protests. And if you tell them they need a vanguard party, they don't change their minds. They just get mad and pretend you said you already have a vanguard. You may think it's bad if insolent children lose, but I don't. You may think it's bad if mutual aid and protests don't have any effect on systemic issues and more Americans keep suffering every year. I don't, because I didn't delude myself into thinking individualist actions can solve systemic problems, because I'm not a liberal. I can, however, give you a very long list of other liberals and grifters you should follow, so you can seal clap along to guillotine memes as you continue to lose in real life." This is one of the better ones. What are left comms? Left communism is a branch of liberalism typically associated with Marxism due to its name. Left comms are often called ultra leftists, but do not usually refer to themselves this way. They will mostly identify as orthodox Marxists or simply call themselves the quote real Marxists and others revisionists. More on this later. What do left comms do? Criticism, and not much else. Left comms regard any praxis as revisionism. Since it is being done in the real world and must make concessions to reality, this is an unacceptable deviation from the theoretically perfect revolution that left comms envision, but have never realized. For this reason, left comms do not support any existing or previous attempts at socialism, the USSR, China, the DPRK, etc. All of these are quote unquote capitalist states according to left comms, and do not deserve even critical support since they have not yet abolished the commodity form. So left comms have a better idea about how to implement socialism then? No. There is no unified theory among left comms for how a revolutionary overthrow of capitalism can take place. There are various thinkers with as many different ideas about declining conditions under capitalism and spontaneous revolts, but no historical record of any movements led by left comms or any revolutions that left communist support past their infancy. Once a revolt gets beyond anger and violence directed at capitalists, these rioters must immediately transcend the ideology of capitalism and build the new system, exactly as Marx and left communists who do not all agree envision it, or else it is capitalist. So, what's the difference between left comms and Trotskyists, or liberals who denounce socialism? In theory, lots. In practice, not much. Trotskyists have various theories about permanent revolution, but in practice share most opinions on existing socialism as left comms and other liberals. And in practice, they all take part in vigorous debate as well as academic and electoral pursuits. Trotskyists also sell newspapers. Despite their identical contributions, the difference, according to them all, is in the goals they're striving for. So, what's the point? Capitalists and imperialists need compliant subjects, people who can't envision any any alternatives or ways to implement them, and who denounce all the attempts to do so. It's very convenient to have purely academic critics calling themselves the true anti-capitalists and anti-imperialists, while they live under and materially support both. And that is the point. The entire point of left comms are to be people who live in the West, materially support capitalism and imperialism with everything that they do, all of their taxes, the work that they do, uh, just like living under the empire, you have to support it, and then convince themselves that they are the true socialists more so than the people who are actually implementing socialism elsewhere. Because that's the whole point of it. It's like to be compliant subjects under capitalism. Let's see what else we got. Oh, this is a good one too. So I wrote this up in conjunction with Hezbollahify the Universe or the Known Universe. Another good page I collab with a lot. So what is the plan? Liberals love to ask, well, if voting is useless, what's the plan? But it would be a mistake to think this is a genuine question. What they really want is to hear your suggestion so they can intentionally misunderstand and mock it, and then go back to voting. Fortunately, this is included in the plan. The plan is the revolution that is currently happening. The anti-imperialist bloc ending U.S. hegemony uh, by making every war too expensive for the U.S. to afford or politically survive. And when that hegemony is weak enough, socialist revolutions around the world will flourish without being sabotaged or overthrown like they were during the Cold War. This can take decades, but it is accelerating. Even the most popular anti imperialist talking heads didn't expect the current level of conflict between the US and Iran so soon. The US is never getting those military bases back. All of the various delusions liberal imperialists believe in are included in this plan. For instance, reform, as in socialist policies via elections, or revolution in the first world, or the US empire restoring its supremacy through war, or global apocalypse. People who believe in the first three are trying to return to a fictional, idealized past in which liberal democracy delivered relative prosperity because they accept the propaganda of that system and haven't studied history. So, this is just a quick breakdown of like the distinction between the liberal and even conservative worldview and view of American history and the Marxist and decolonial anti imperialist view, which is that the US was never good. Whatever like good old days Americans are trying to get back to with like more social programs, taxing the rich or whatever, all of that was still based on imperialism and wasn't good for most of the world. It was actually very bad for the US to be in that singular hegemonic position. It caused a lot of suffering for billions of people. So it's actually bad if the US were to get back to that. But again, if Americans, ones who call themselves leftists and progressives, if they're just American nationalists and white supremacists, they want to make America great again with socialism. They're like the Mamdani types who think we can just tax our way into being a good country again. They don't care about the third world. The people who say they believe the last one, this is talking about apocalypse, are lying, or they're eccentric prepper types. There never was a world in which democracy flourished and developed industry, wiping out poverty without violence. There was only colonialism and its propaganda. If that seems more brazen and apparent recently, that's due to the empire's power waning, and with it, the ability to hide its sins. And obviously, there hasn't been an apocalypse yet, nor has the US been able to regain global dominance despite waging constant war for all of our lives. But even among the people who claim to believe this is coming, this is now talking about the apocalypse again, how many are translating this into action? If they really believe this, why continue to live at all? And if so, why participate in any of the obviously inadequate measures like voting or protests? The only people who actually believe in a coming nuclear or climate apocalypse are the preppers, and they do not understand how that would actually play out if it happened, or what their response would need to be for human survival. You can tell because all of their practice is individualist based. They're trying to fend for themselves, their family, their homestead, or whatever. They're not taking human survival seriously. If they were, they'd be organizing in a collective and they would be communists. The only people who are taking this seriously are people like the Chinese Communist Party. The truth is, the people who claim to believe in a coming extinction are lying. They simply want to ignore politics and enjoy their first world privilege as long as possible. This is also factored into the plan. So, what does the plan look like in practice? Let's see. That first world privilege is declining. It looks like a reversal of the developed and developing world, where 5% of humanity is no longer able to leech off the other 95%, to whom they also condescendingly lecture about things like human rights or LGBT rights or being progressive, while they, again, imperialize and parasitize the rest of the world, while congratulating themselves for their tolerance. It looks like living conditions declining in the US and its western vassal states, possibly for the next century, while its ruling and media classes perform increasingly strained acrobatics to pretend their empire hasn't collapsed. The plan means countries around the world having socialist revolutions, most likely the places that tried to before and were foiled by the US and NATO empire under Gladio or similar operations. This will probably happen in Africa and South America before spreading eventually to the rest of Asia and Europe. We could even see a reborn Soviet Union with a similar composition. All of this will take decades, but will accelerate with every flashpoint forced by climate change or political actors. These revolutions will be denounced by liberals and the Western left, also liberals, as dictatorships since they will not be voted into power and will be methodically criticized, quote, from the left in capitalist media. This is an example. This is somebody with a rainbow flag and globe emoji saying, actually, this is a dictatorship, talking about Uh, I guess they're talking about the U.S., but then they also repost the U.S. Central Command saying U.S. forces conducted precision airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Operations will continue as necessary. And then they say, anyway, brunch was amazing today. So that's just like your quintessential liberal. When they make material gains resisting imperialism or tangibly reduce empire's power, the Western left will ignore this or call it inter imperialist conflict. But if the burgeoning socialist projects make any concessions or fail to deliver reforms that Western liberals value, the quote leftists within the empire will be the first to denounce them. The plan means living conditions in the West declining while socialist and anti imperialist countries develop. The responsibility of the anti imperialist bloc is to keep the US from lashing out at the rest of the world in response to this. Again, the Western left, who does nothing to stop their own government's atrocities and genocides, will denounce the strategic patience, demanding anti imperialist countries sacrifice their own people and security to wage war on the US empire. Yeah, again, while they do nothing to stop it themselves. At no point will American bourgeois politics or the activism of Americans have any effect on this process. It doesn't matter how many people participate or how popular the leftist influencers and their movements become. A large mass of people is not effective if their actions are materially neutral. Just as a large boulder is harmless until it is moving towards something it could crush, no amount of protest or mutual aid will affect a political system that has already co opted them. The Western leftist quote movement isn't going in any productive direction. It's only there to keep you occupied. So, yeah. If that hasn't become like abundantly clear to more people by now, that's kind of a you problem. Like you should have figured that out. Like honestly, how many years can you do the same stupid mutual aid and protest before you realize it's not actually doing anything? Mm. Here's another quick one. It's okay. You are all allowed to stumble onto the things I was saying years ago, whenever it's convenient for you. It's very important that liberals keep losing to the fascists, or else it would prove Marxism Leninism wrong. There's a lot of people in the West, in the US especially, who call themselves socialists, communists, Marxists, whatever. And the things that they support are just objectively liberal praxis, mutual aid, protest. They don't talk about vanguards. They're not denouncing existing parties that call themselves revolutionary, but are just doing liberal praxis. You guys have to understand that the reason there is no militant movement like the IRA or some kind of party that would actually get something done is because you, the people listening to this, keep tolerating liberal parties like the PSL, like FRSO, DSA, even. Like, as long as you keep tolerating them and you don't denounce them every day, well, then that's your fault that you don't have a movement. I'm 100% serious when I say that every American who tolerated genocide is an irredeemable pig person. That was my term when the genocide started and liberals just totally ignored it and they were totally fine with it. I was calling Americans irredeemable people, but then treat the right came around, which kind of obviously took precedence over that. It's a much better, much catchier term, but you can just swap them out. It's the same thing. If I say irredeemable pig person, just think treat the right, meaning every single one who voted Democrat or Republican, and also the rest that didn't vote not because they were protesting genocide, but because they were unaware of it or knew but didn't care. Not only am I not joking even a little bit when I say it's good if the fascist government and corporations make these people homeless and starving, or if the mass pew pews continue, I also think this about you if you still associate with liberals. If you are so cowardly that you can tolerate people who endorse genocide, you also deserve everything that's coming and worse. Just remember this in a few weeks when you start to see the energy bills going up, when the oil crisis actually hits. What some people think happened. Brian Thompson was assassinated, scaring healthcare executives and causing a rise in class consciousness, leading to more people's claims getting approved. What actually happened? Brian Thompson was assassinated, and people who were unsatisfied with healthcare costs used this as a cathartic emotional release. Executives increased their security and privacy protocols, passing the cost on to consumers. Millions of people cheered on a lone wolf terrorist while also claiming he is innocent, an uncomfortably contradictory position. Some people's claims were approved, and this made headlines, but whether this was an actual increase in claims covered or simply a media cycle is unclear. And if there was an increase, it was temporary. The healthcare situation nationally has not improved, and the industry is better prepared for copycats. Again, what some people think happened. Dozens of warehouses were burned, causing more fear in the elites and class consciousness among workers. What actually happened? Companies lost insured inventory, were compensated for the damages, and millions of unsatisfied working people have another cathartic event to rally around. Again, nothing has become cheaper for workers, quite the opposite, and their working conditions have not improved. The only victory being an unmeasurable sense of solidarity, which does not translate into organized resistance threatening any power structures. Again, like I just have to separate myself from the rest of the grifters. If you check out pages like WLOTS Pod, um, somebody I used to associate with back in the day when their podcast was called Dixieland of the Proletariat or whatever. Um, I used to associate with Nelson. Used to have him on the show. He's now just a liberal grifter. Like if you were sitting back and saying that the warehouse burnings, that Luigi, that any of this stuff is revolutionary, you are misleading people so that you can make a media career for yourself off of this energy that people have, this dissatisfaction that they have, and their desire to support what seems like it's something that's getting something done. Even though we've been here before, we were here in 2020 when police stations were getting burned down. We were here when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on. Everybody thought it was going to be a revolutionary movement and moment, but there was no vanguard party to take advantage of that energy. So it fell to the Democratic Party. They co-opted it, and then a bunch of liberal grifters made media careers. And what did that get you? It got you nothing. What would actually scare powerful people? An organization or multiple that claimed responsibility for such attacks and could reasonably threaten more, that also makes clear political demands, something like the IRA or Umkhonto Wesiwe. There are many examples of Leninist vanguards, and they have been the only successful movements in history at toppling capitalist regimes, or a mass movement of people leaving for existing socialist countries, rather than remaining subject of capitalism and selectively removing consumption choices to be more, quote, ethical. Instead of trying to fight capitalism one industry at a time, like becoming vegan or whatever, an organized effort of self proclaimed socialists joining existing socialism would actually threaten capitalist elites. And this is more achievable than ever with the development of countries like China and even the DPRK. Everybody has probably noticed, even North Korea has had a glow up recently. They've been developing, they've been working very hard. Now that the propaganda about socialism being synonymous with authoritarian poverty no longer works. Again, this is the best time in history to move to a socialist country. Nothing that nothing like either of that nothing like either of these exists anywhere in the West. There's no coherent movement. There's a couple individuals who are like moving to existing socialist countries, and some of them are becoming influencers and making content, but there is no coherent movement. There's no organization of people that like helps leftists move to socialist countries. So your movement remains quite unserious and silly. You look really dumb. Uh, People seem content with symbolic victories so far. What we do have is a media sphere of leftist influencers making careers out of your attention to these events, and you are mistaking content for activism. If that's what you're into, go consume content, but please stay away from me. I can't take any of it seriously. We all understand why liberals are pathetic for still clinging to, quote, victories like gay marriage and Obamacare, as they lose those and other hard won rights. If you're celebrating adventurism, you're doing the same thing, but for an edgier audience. You don't have an organized vanguard yet, and until you do, any fantasies about a revolutionary movement at all are quite juvenile. You must either get serious about holding your current quote Marxist orgs to account and make them into real vanguards, or start some. If that's beyond your ability, you should make some arrangements to leave. Anything else is LARPing and is detrimental to whatever you claim to be building. This was just a great tweet. I didn't write this one, obviously. This is from Leone underscore one, Leoney underscore one on Twitter. They said left comms are anarchists who pretend to be Marxists, which is exactly true. This is exactly that. I think that actually is all the explainers. I'm going to just scroll through my profile because I know I have some other text posts from recently. This one was from this morning. Now that the US government is aggressively targeting leftists, I bet you are all so glad you, quote, got out in the streets and had your faces recorded while you, quote, resisted. It's a good thing you didn't listen to Marxists who told you that mutual aid and protests are silly liberal praxis and useless until you have a vanguard party. Enjoy El Salvador, losers. And I'm not joking. Like, if you are still part of the Western left, if you're still going out to protest and throwing dildos at ICE facilities, well, I'm sad to say that, like, because you didn't turn that into any real movement, you're going to probably go to El Salvador. Sucks to suck, I guess. Oops, all grifters. These are all people that These people are just like annoying as fuck. I can't stand them. As Balify the Universe says, I'm just jealous because my following isn't as big. It's very funny. So the Redneck Papa, Guillotine Depot, LA Meme Trust, White Trash Propaganda, and What's Left of the South podcast, they're grifters. They are liberal grifters. And if you follow them, let me just make it clear, I think you're really stupid. Like really dumb. What Western leftists think revolutionary defeatism means. Any criticism of left wing movements, especially those in the imperial core, which are performative and not revolutionary. What it actually means. Revolutionary defeatism is a concept popularized by Vladimir Lenin during World War I in his 1915 text, The Defeat of One's Own Government in the Imperialist War. It is the anti-war stance that the working class's primary enemy is its own imperialist government, meaning the military defeat of one's own nation is a quote lesser evil compared to a national victory, as it creates the conditions for socialist revolution. Now keep that in mind when you see a bunch of quote unquote progressive leftists, Democrats, or whatever, thinking that the US should like stop the war in Iran because it's bad for the US. No, it should continue. It should continue until the US collapses its own hegemony, creates an oil crisis, and undeniably loses the conflict. It should, until there is no way that the US can possibly deny that it has lost miserably against Iran, it should continue that long. What Western leftists think revolutionary optimism means. Uncritically supporting every self-identified progressive movement, no matter how ineffective or liberal it may be. What it actually means. Revolutionary optimism is a foundational mindset in Marxist-Leninist theory that rejects cynicism, despair, and capitalist fatalism in favor of an active, scientifically grounded confidence in the ultimate victory of the working class. Rather than being a form of naive, blind hope, it is a deliberate political posture rooted in historical materialism, the analysis of past human struggles and economic structures to prove that radical societal change is entirely achievable. Lenin's practical application of this concept emphasizes the following principles. Scientific basis, not official optimism. Lenin fiercely opposed what he called, quote, official optimism or smug optimism. He argued that romanticized, superficial hope only served to hide opportunism and mask real systemic challenges. True revolutionary optimism requires looking squarely at harsh political realities, diagnosing the structural weaknesses of the capitalist ruling class, and planning accordingly. Mass agency. It is driven by the conviction that the masses, not individual heroes, again, not Luigi's, are the motive force of history. Even during severe setbacks or periods of political stagnation, a revolutionary optimist remains confident in the resilience, discipline, and latent transformative power of the united working class. Rejection of fatalism. The concept is a direct weapon against the psychological warfare of the bourgeoisie, which seeks to instill nihilism, complacency, and a belief that capitalism is the permanent, unalterable end of history. The revolutionary engineer approach. As a theoretician, Lenin did not passively wait for socialist future to inevitably manifest on its own. Revolutionary optimism dictates that faith without work is fantasy. It commands activists to build solidarity, organize workplaces, and actively construct the pathway to revolution, even under the most difficult conditions. And again, this is what I've been saying all along. Like, if you call yourself a revolutionary and you are organizing with the PSL, you are a LARPer. You are quite stupid. You are making the movement look bad because you are calling yourself a revolutionary, and then you are participating in bourgeois electoralism. You're going to protest and you're doing mutual aid. None of that is effective. You should either start a vanguard, or you should be honest with yourself that you are not a revolutionary, you are not in a revolutionary party, and you should leave. What happened? Oh, I went the wrong way. What Western leftists actually engage in. Mao uses quote revolutionary impetuosity to name a specifically leftist deviation, an over-eager, emotional, and voluntarist tendency that exaggerates the revolution's strength, belittles the enemy, and ignores concrete conditions, especially in military and mass work. Now, this is like pretty much every leftist influencer and everyone that's following them and commenting on all their shit. It's all these people who are saying, like, we own these streets, as you very much do not own these streets. It's all these people saying, like, Trump is a loser, as you lose to Trump. All these people saying, like, Trump is cornered, he's trapped. We're just about to get him, he's about to die, as he continues ruling over you and entrenching his power and getting richer every day. It's quite literally LARP. Like, Most of the Western left is absolutely delusional about the conditions they're living under and the inadequacy of their responses to it. In the standard English translation of his writings, Mao's clearest explicit definition appears in a note to his early report on the Hunan peasant movement, where he summarizes this as, quote, one of two deviations then present in the party. He writes that some comrades, quote, suffer from revolutionary impetuosity and overestimate the subjective forces of the revolution and underestimate the forces of the counter revolution. They are impatient for quick results, inclined to adventurism, and lack sober assessment of the political situation. In other words, revolutionary impetuosity is not revolutionary zeal itself, but zeal that has lost its bearing in Marxist analysis of class forces and timing. Running through his correspondence and internal directives, most of which survives only in the selected works, Mao returns to this theme when criticizing ultra-left putschism, military adventurism, and commandism in mass movements. In the introduction to the selected works, the party's publication committee notes that, quote, numerous letters and telegrams in which Mao corrected comrades for, quote, emotional, impatient, and subjectivist work could not be reproduced, but that the included texts already show him rebuking, quote, those who in the name of revolution attempted to substitute a handful of bold actions for the long, patient work of building roots among the masses, a formulation that is precisely what he elsewhere condenses into the label revolutionary impetuosity. In the first Civil War period, this idea is implicit in his polemic against, quote, left opportunism and the ideology of roving rebel bands, where he criticizes comrades who rely on, quote, blind actionism without political preparation in the countryside. In On Correcting Mistaken Ideas in the Party, which summarizes earlier letters to Red Army units, Mao criticizes those, quote, who see only the courage of a few and not the strength of the enemy, who, quote, fight without investigating, move without consulting the masses, and despise organizational discipline, attitudes he explicitly links in editorial notes to revolutionary impetuosity. Here, impetuosity means a kind of subjectivist voluntarism, the belief that sheer will and boldness can compensate for weak forces, poor organization, or unfavorable conditions. He also applies the term to mass work. In notes attached to his Hunan report, party editors recall Mao's private letters of 1927 criticizing comrades who demanded, quote, instant elimination of all landlords, or immediate equalization of land, or total destruction of all old customs, in areas where the peasant associations were still weak and unprepared. Mao argued that such tactics, driven by, quote, revolutionary impetuosity, frightened the middle peasants, isolated the poor peasants, and helped the enemy exploit peasant fears of chaos. For him, revolutionary initiative had to be combined with, quote, step by step work, careful differentiation of class forces, and flexible tactics, where those who were replaced by impatient decrees and spectacular actions, he would label it, quote, revolutionary impetuosity. Where those were replaced by impatient decrees, yeah. In his military correspondence, later summarized in, quote, problems of strategy in China's Revolutionary War, Mao again condemns commanders who, quote, launch counteroffensives regardless of the balance of the forces, seek, quote, decisive battles at every turn, and ignore principles of concentration, mobility, and war of annihilation. Editorial notes link these errors to the same, quote, revolutionary impetuosity he had previously criticized in letters to frontline units, a left deviation that mistakes daring operations for sound strategy, underestimates enemy encirclement and suppression, and treats retreat or strategic defense as cowardice. Yeah. Again, it just makes sense to me to listen to the guys like Lenin and Mao who actually pulled this shit off. But people want to listen to Trotsky, liberals. They want to like simp for Mamdani. It's fine. Like, you don't have to listen, but you will keep losing, and it's good that you do because the Marxists, the people who actually listened to dialectical materialism and the previous Marxists who came before them and showed them the way, wrote the theory, and then did the praxis. You should be listening to those people, and if you're not, you should lose. Here's a quote from Che Guevara. In the final analysis, the economic development of the United States and the need of its workers to maintain their standard of living means that our struggle for national liberation is not waged against a given social regime, but rather against the whole nation, bound as a block by the ironclad supreme law of common interest over their domination of the economic life of Latin America. I'm trying to see. I hope that the levels are good. Also wanted to just check and make sure I'm not. Have any of these been playing any audio? Because I sure haven't heard it. Anyway, let's see if I got some more text posts I can go through. Anybody in the chat at all? Doesn't seem so. This was a funny one. So I had seen the quote of Ludmila Pavlichenko saying, like, every fascist that I leave alive will kill women and children. So they were saving lives by killing these fascists. If you just extend that same logic, every American who doesn't leave the West and stays alive will parasitize 5 people in the global South. Every American that either leaves or becomes homeless and dies will save 5 real people from sweatshop labor and poverty. And that is how it works. Like, if you guys actually believe in the simple fact that Americans consume on average 5 times as much as people in the global South who are making their stuff in sweatshops, well, then it would make sense that the fewer Americans, or even if you just leave and go to like a different country that isn't that imperial system, you would be ending some of that labor, that sweatshop labor and exploitation. And if you don't believe that, well, then you don't believe in things like BDS or being vegan, donating money to like all the things that people are currently doing, who then say that it's silly to leave the country. They just don't want to extend the logic to their entire lifestyle. They want to just pick and choose and tackle individual aspects of capitalism one at a time because they just want to be comfortable. I'm never going to have anything positive to say about Fergie Chambers. If you have a problem with this, I suggest you block me now. Uh, yeah, if anybody's interested, I have some screenshots in Discord. Basically, all of that drama is from like 3 years ago. The pinned post I have here, this one right here, it's RLD and MF whole recording, but it's like just a 5 minute clip. That is when I had Marxist Fairy, who ran another meme page, on my old podcast to try and talk about Fergie Chambers, who she was accusing of being a Fed and some kind of CIA psyop. I don't know. It's inconclusive. All I know is he was going to sue me for trying to say that in any kind of public forum online. So it seems to have gotten to him. Uh, and in that time, Rad Left Dad came on the show to try and defend this guy. I don't know why he felt the need to try and defend a billionaire's son, but he wanted to do that. And in trying to, he looked like a total ass and ended up being a misogynist. He exposed that adorable communism, got some kind of nude pictures from Marxist Fairy, and then shared them with Rad Left Dad, and they were both laughing about it to themselves. That's revenge porn. That's actually really fucked up. And then he got so flustered trying to defend this Fergie Chambers billionaire guy that he exposed that on the podcast. Like, Marxist Fairy had him cornered with actual evidence and documents and links. And he was like, well, whatever. I like your titty pics, though. He's just a piece of shit. And I showed this to Cocktails and Capitalism. I showed this to Commie Central. I showed this to all the people who still associate with Rad Left Dad and Adorable Communism because they're unprincipled liberal grifters who are trying to make a media career off your attention. They don't actually care about any of this shit. So once again, if you follow them, I think you're quite stupid. Just please understand that. And if you want screenshots, they're in the Discord. It's stuff about like Fergie's arrest record for beating his partners, for beating women. If you trust anything about his like compound in the Berkshires or whatever, you're just dumb. Like, I just have questions about your critical thinking ability, and I think you should go away because I think you're quite stupid. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, not genocide heirs. We got Putler, we got Xi Jinping, we got Kim Jong Un, we got the Ayatollah, and we have genocide heirs. We have Biden and Trump. What else? Any other recent text posts of my own? Let's see, what did I say here? Do any of you have a single liberal that you cut off because of their support for Democrats during a genocide? I've asked on here plenty of times and gotten either no response or shit libs unfollowing. Are you all really that cowardly? And if that's the case, how are you surprised you're still losing? Why would you think you deserve better? Again, I've outed like a bunch of liberals. I've talked repeatedly about Doug Marshall, who is a drug dealer who lives in Bucks County and works for Overhead Door in Burlington. I've tried to get people in my Discord to just call his job and ask them if they still have the drug dealer Doug Marshall employed there. No one will do it. You guys are cowards. I think you're stupid. I think it's good that you lose. I have all kinds of great ideas for what you could do as actual practice that would be antagonistic toward liberals instead of just like begging them for money, which they don't want to give you. And it's not surprising to me that I've had a lot of people just ignore that because you are, in fact, liberals yourselves. Oh, this was very funny. When Poke Preet got outed as some kind of like, what did he do? Let's see. Bro got caught using the N word and is mad about it. Uh, Yeah, he's just this piece of shit grifter left con. He doesn't support existing socialism. If you follow Poker Preet, block me because, again, I think you're stupid. Is it clear? I think you're stupid. Same thing if you follow Hassan Piker. If you like Hassan Piker, you're dumb. If you think Ukraine can defeat Russia, I have bad news about your IQ. Again, just making it clear, adorable communism is a sex pest and misogynist. See my pinned post if you don't believe it. I wonder if I put in the comments here. So this is a copy pasta that I've made. I have it in my notepad because people keep accusing Russia or China of being imperialist. So I'll just read it on here since it's another good explainer. Saying that Russia is not an imperialist power might seem like a hot take, but that's only because people often throw the word around without sticking to the actual definition. If you're going to use a framework, you should probably apply it correctly. And the person who gave us the classic definition of imperialism is Vladimir Lenin. In his book, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, Lenin lays out a very specific checklist for what makes a country imperialist. It's not just about a country throwing its weight around. For Lenin, an imperialist state needs to have 1. Monopoly capitalism running the economy. 2. Finance capital, big banks, merged with industrial capital calling the shots in the government. 3. Exporting capital, money for investment, being more important than exporting goods. 4. Giant international monopolies carving up the world among themselves. 5. And the territorial spirit of the planet, territorial split of the planet by the big powers being complete and locked in. Miss any of those, and you're not dealing with imperialism. You're dealing with something else. So, how does Russia stack up? First, monopoly capitalism. Sure, Russia has oligarchs, but its economy isn't dominated by giant global monopolies that set the prices for the rest of the world, like you see with major firms in the US, EU, or Japan. Russian companies are mostly price takers, not price setters, especially with all the sanctions on them. Checkmark? No. Second, does finance capital rule the state? Not really. Russia's banks aren't major players in the global financial system. The ruble isn't a reserve currency like the dollar or euro. Its markets don't have the power to discipline the world economy. Compare that to the influence of Wall Street or the City of London, and it's not even close. Another fail. Where's the third one? Did I miss the third? I guess I'll just have to read it from my notepad. That's annoying. I didn't realize I did that when I posted this comment. Sorry, just bear with me a second, folks. So, third, and this is a big one, export of capital being more important than export of commodities. Imperialist powers invest heavily in other countries. Think foreign direct investment, owning factories and land abroad, creating debt dependencies. Russia, its main exports are commodities, oil, gas, wheat, and weapons. It doesn't dominate global production chains by owning them. It sells stuff. Another fail. Fourth, international monopolies dividing the world. Russian corporations aren't sitting at the table with big global cartels from the US, EU, and Japan carving up markets. For the most part, they're locked out of those systems or have a subordinate role. Fail again. Finally, the completed territorial division of the world. Russia isn't the one setting the rules of the global order. It doesn't run the World Bank or the IMF. It doesn't police the world's shipping lanes or dictate economic policy to the global south. It is a country reacting to an imperial system that has already been built and is dominated by others. So fail on that last point too. This isn't about defending Russia or saying they're great. They've got their own problems with oligarchs and capitalism. But if you take Lenin's own definition of imperialism, the one people claim to respect, and apply it strictly, Russia just doesn't fit. Words have specific meanings, and if we're going to use them, we should use them right. By Lenin's standards, they're simply not imperialists. Let's see what else. Any others? Any other recent text posts? Here's another one I made. It's a picture of Biden, and it says Zionist, racist, white supremacist, incompetent. Administration run by competent lackeys. Blue label allows liberals to ignore fascism. Good for imperialism. It shows Kamala, Zionist, racist, white supremacist, and incompetent. Administration run by competent lackeys. Blue label allows liberals to ignore fascism. Good for imperialism. And then Trump, Zionist, racist, white supremacist, and incompetent. His admin is also run by incompetent lackeys. He is unmasked fascism. This is bad for imperialism. So you may not understand it, but Trump is actually better for the anti-imperialist cause because he is so incompetent, because he is so bad at managing the empire. Whereas Biden, even being a senile idiot like he was, had competent lackeys who would put a blue, happy face on imperialism, who allowed liberals to literally ignore a genocide. It's better if Trump is in office, like quite literally, objectively better for Gaza that is being bombed less than they were under Biden. Mm. I'm not going to read out the whole list, but I made a list of winners and losers for the next century. This will continue being true. You guys can pause the video there if you want to read all of that. Let's see. I'll do a couple more and then I'll wrap it up for the day. Did you ever hear someone say something that immediately made you distance yourself from them? I heard someone say my favorite show is a reality TV show, but they were talking about Naked and Afraid. Like I heard that guy say that, and I was like, oh man, this guy's like really dumb. This is like a really dumb guy that I'm friends with. Like, and I instantly felt less friendly to him. That same guy actually also said like a couple years before, he was like, Elon Musk is probably our best hope for exploring space. This was in like 2022. He said this. This is how dumb liberals are. Another guy said, yeah, I just don't think killing kids is a good tactic. This is right after October 7th. He was referring to Hamas because he believed in the 40 beheaded babies bullshit. Again, liberals are just retarded people. I was saying how I used to listen to Chapo back in the 2016-ish era, but now I'm listening to the old Come Town episodes, and it's much, much funnier. Like, it's actually incredibly funny. I can't believe I didn't listen to it back then. Here is the What Some People Think Happened post that's down there. Yeah, if you follow any of these feds, I'm definitely blocking you. Ideas don't exist. East German girl and Iraqi communist. These are more left comms and obvious feds. Again, you don't have to listen to me. Just understand that I think you're profoundly stupid if you follow those people. Every day I come on here and tell you the difference between liberals and the left. And yet many of you still think you're part of the left, despite obviously being stupid liberals. And that's okay, because the difference is in the reality you experience as a result. When the genocide started several years ago, you made a choice. You chose to continue associating with liberals who endorsed it, liberals who ignored it, and liberals who pretended to be opposed to it but continued to vote for the people doing it. I, on the other hand, started making clear the distinction between genocide enablers and those opposed to it. Most of you, in response, pretended to not understand what words meant. This is the typical liberal routine. Very intelligent people suddenly becoming selectively retarded so they can avoid their own complicity in genocide. This current economy is what you get in return for doing this. You earned it. Enjoy. Someone asked me the other day why I keep using the R word, why I keep calling people retarded. They were like, don't you know any disabled people? It's like, yes, of course. But I don't think I have any people following me who are legitimately mentally handicapped enough that they would ever take offense at the word retarded. I have people who are neurodivergent, sure. Autistic people following me, of course. But not people that you would refer to as like retarded, and therefore not be the ones taking offense to the term. But I think there is a huge overlap, and this is why I keep doing it. There is a huge overlap between people who voted blue for Kamala Harris, for genociders, and then take offense at the word retarded. Again, that is like the liberal performative progressivism. Like you literally voted for and took part and endorsed genocide, and you think you're a good person for being offended on behalf of someone else at the word retarded. So I'm going to keep using it because I want those people to go away because, again, they are retarded. All right, let's see what else we got here. That might be it for like the most recent text posts. I was curious, like when people first started to hear the term third worldism, and if it was less than 3 years ago, because I've only really seen it become a thing in like common parlance. Like I remember back in like 2017 hearing about Jason Unruh, and he was like already on the downside. No offense to Jason, I actually like Jason Unruh as far as I know. I haven't kept up with anything that he's made, any content that he's made, or anything that he's said lately. But again, he was the one calling himself a third worldist back in like 2017, 2018. And again, I had gotten the impression that he had been more popular, and then was like his popularity was waning. So I just wonder if he's like still doing it, if he's gotten more popularity as more people are getting onto like catching on to imperialism and treat the right stuff. Again, I just can't describe how good seeing the treat the right rhetoric has been. Oh, yeah, I already read this one. Just to make it clear, here's the guy who shot Renee Good, and then Renee Good support the guy who shot her supports genocidal fascists. He's Republicans, you know. Renee Good supports genocidal fascist Democrats. This situation is fascist infighting. I'm not joking. Like I actually do believe that. So, mm, what's this one? Nope, not me. Here's the so what's the plan post. Again, have you seen any liberal admit they were racist to ignore genocide and vote for Democrats? Even just one? No. Then why is it bad if Trump makes them homeless? Again, just genuine question. Like, why is it bad? Here is the what are left comms post. American leftists will really call themselves revolutionaries for going to a protest or doing some mutual aid. And then call you a LARPer if you laugh. I forgot I used a video of red squirrels or chipmunks in the yard. Oh yeah, once again. Anyone else remember a few weeks ago when all the Radlib influencers and their simps were excited about the warehouse fires? Did that turn into some mass awakening of class consciousness or disappear from the media and therefore everyone's minds? Again, if you just have a memory a little bit longer than a goldfish, you guys should be able to catch on to these patterns. But again, you don't. All right, let me wrap it up with this one. So this is another post I made. Let's talk about vanguard parties. According to Lenin, the Vanguard Party is a centralized, disciplined, and highly organized revolutionary party composed of the most class conscious and politically advanced members of the proletariat, the working class. Its role is to lead the working class in overthrowing capitalism and establishing a socialist state. The purpose of the Vanguard Party: to raise class consciousness among workers, to organize and direct revolutionary struggle against capitalism, to seize state power and establish dictatorship of the proletariat, to guide society toward communism after the revolution. Lenin developed this concept in his 1902 pamphlet, What is to be Done, where he argued that without a vanguard party, the working class would only achieve trade union consciousness, economic demands, rather than revolutionary consciousness, political overthrow of capitalism. To understand why vanguard parties in the Leninist sense are absent or marginalized in the imperial core, the US, Western Europe, Japan, etc., we can use class analysis and world systems theory to examine the material and geopolitical conditions that suppress revolutionary consciousness and organization in these regions. Lenin himself argued in Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism in 1916, that the ruling classes in advanced capitalist nations bribe a segment of the working class, the labor aristocracy, with higher wages, social benefits, and relative stability, thereby neutralizing revolutionary potential. The core's, quote, working class is objectively aligned with imperialism, making it difficult for a Leninist vanguard to emerge. Revolutionary movements instead arise more in the periphery, for example, Cuba, Vietnam, Burkina Faso. The key mechanisms: higher wages and consumerism. Workers in the imperial core benefit from super profits extracted from the global south via cheap labor, resource extraction, and financial domination. This creates a privileged layer of workers who identify more with the bourgeoisie than with the international proletarian struggle. Institutionalized class compromise. Trade unions, social democracy, and welfare states, for example, Scandinavia or New Deal policies, co opt worker demands, channeling dissent into reforms rather than revolution. Cultural and media hegemony. The ruling class promotes individualism, anti communism, and identity based politics rather than class struggle, fragmenting working class solidarity. Repression and anti communist structures. Even when radical movements emerge in the core, they face state repression, COINTELPRO in the US, banning of communist parties in Cold War Europe, two party liberal democracy. Electoral systems marginalize revolutionary parties, funneling dissent into harmless reformism, for example, Bernie Sanders or Syriza. NGOization of leftism. Radical movements are defanged by being absorbed into NGOs, academia, and nonprofit bureaucracies that avoid revolutionary politics. Thus, authentic vanguard parties like the Bolsheviks historically emerge in semi peripheral or peripheral states where exploitation is more brutal, the state is weaker, and workers and peasants have no stake in imperialism. While protest movements create the conditions for revolution, the vanguard party must be deliberately constructed by Marxists to ensure ideological rigor and strategic leadership. History shows that revolutionary success depends on this conscious organization, not spontaneity. Here's a meme. It's Western culture, whose Captain Planet made up of genocide, child slaughter, war, deception, and mass rape. Here's another meme I made. These are your only options, and they all get more difficult the longer you wait. You can either form a vanguard, you can join existing socialism, or everything else, which includes mutual aid, protests, Luigi style adventurism. If you follow either of the first two, you get the happy golden castle at the end. If you follow the last one, which is everything else, you get a homeless tent under a bridge. Here's decades where nothing happens, being put to rest by weeks where decades happen. Here's Vladimir Liberal, who's got a Harris Waltz hat and a Ukraine pin on, saying fascism can be defeated with funny inflatable animal costumes. Let's see. No, you tankies in your purity test. This election will really change things, and it changes from Bernie to AOC to Fetterman to Zoran. And then at the bottom, when they inevitably sell out, it's okay, the tankies were right again. It applies to all of them. Don't you wish you had some militant organization, a militant group to fight all these fascists with? Sounds authoritarian, though. Anyway, good luck with your dance protests. The Marxist-Leninist Vanguard Party is literally the only left-wing political form with proven success. All other forms of left politics have failed. Here's my meme. Did the mutual aid and dildo protests work yet? Of course not. Yes, what is to be done? Good question to ask yourselves. All right, you guys. I think I'll wrap it up there. Have I been at an hour? Yeah, hour and 1 minute. So thank you, all people who've been watching. Appreciate you guys joining. I'll see if I can get some good clips out of this from the Substack. And I will see you again soon when I do this again. Later.